Okay, this is our longer second part of our presentation on alcoholism and dealing with alcoholism. We talked in the first half about the basic principles of the idea that first there is damage to your life, and in spite of that damage, you're not able to consistently moderate your use. That is the most useful definition I can have. And I want to go ahead and indulge for a minute in talking a little bit about my own history and the people that have been around me in terms of probably this mirrors a lot of people's experiences. When I was growing up, and I'm pretty old, so it goes to a different era, alcoholism was not recognized for the kind of serious problem it was. It probably wasn't until like the 1970s and 80s that we really realized it wasn't just a joke. I remember when I was growing up, a fellow who was sort of aging out at that point was a guy named Dean Martin, who was part of the original Rat Pack. If y'all remember the concept of the Rat Pack, it was a bunch of entertainers. And his whole shtick was he was alcoholic. I mean, he had a primetime TV show where he behaved as if he was drunk continuously, and it was a big joke. Or there was a movie that came along, probably more like in the 80s, named Arthur. It was a movie named Arthur, and there was two movies about he was this rich alcoholic, and it was all very, very funny. And so it tells you something about where the mindset was then, that really, it wasn't meant to be insensitive. It really was just a lack of understanding. But I remember as I was growing up, and I was just kind of looking around me trying to figure out how the world worked. And it turns out that all three of my father's brothers, thankfully not my father, were alcoholic. And so we would go and visit them, and what I would experience was a real positive part of it, which is they'd come home after work, they would be drunk pretty soon, they would get really funny and loud and playful, and they would give you money to go do stuff. So like, these are great guys, I love it. Alcoholism's a great thing, you know, these are really fun fellas. I didn't at that point really appreciate what was happening when I wasn't there, which was a much darker situation, and at least a couple of these guys wound up divorced and with some very sad and tragic lives. But that was my introduction. I'm trying to figure out what is this about, how does this thing work, and understanding it. The thing that really started hitting me later was, as I was coming through later high school and on through college and early adult life, there were people who were both siblings of mine, more than one sibling of mine, as well as people who were some of my best friends who I played tennis with, or rode bikes with, or lifted weights with, and drank with. There was something different happening with them. And I would see that their drinking became, they drank more, they drank longer, and the consequences in their life became more and more substantial. And it's really weird to know somebody in one light and really begin to realize, oh my God, this person who I know and connect with so well is being controlled by this phenomenon. This is damaging them so much. So it was a really kind of confusing thing to me, and it is for a lot of people. And that's a tough one for people who love someone who's alcoholic, because it's hard to really conceptualize that this person completely lacks control of this. So often there's a kind of a resistance to accepting that and recognizing that. You know, from there, I went on in my career, and early on in my career, when I was like 23, I was able to get a position at the Mental Health Center, working in the addictions program and actually helping to establish that addictions program. And my role was to carry that in the community. So at 23 years old, I went and met with the judges and established an in-court consulting program. You better believe that was intimidating for a 23-year-old kid who's barely out of college. But the idea was that I would establish a consulting program, and I would go into their courts, and I would be in their courtroom, and when folks came in where either alcoholism or later it became any kind of psychiatric issues, I would then be involved, and I would go off and consult with this person and work out some kind of arrangement between the person who would often be given a sentence, but it would be held over their head while they got help and so on. And that was an early on introduction to this. That actually coincided with the development of the whole Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the MADD, M-A-D-D program. Because prior to that time, it was real common for people to drive drunk, you know. I taught myself not to do that, but I was surrounded by very responsible and educated peers who did it without a thought. It was just something you did. So the world has changed in how it's seen things, and I've been very involved in it as it's gone along. Done a lot of other work, inpatient and outpatient, with addictions of all kinds. And so that's kind of where this is coming from, both a strong personal and professional experience base. Now we talk about what are we dealing with. We could talk endlessly about this disorder and about how to deal with it, but probably the neatest way to encapsulate the intervention is to go to the Alcoholics Anonymous program. Alcoholics Anonymous is a program that was established by non-professionals, by people with the disease, in the 1930s. Up to that point, alcoholics were drunk. They were just drunks. They were useless. They were irresponsible. They were seen in a very negative light as being immoral people, and there was no real appreciation of the disease itself. These folks brought it into a very different light. These were, for the most part, the people who founded it were people who had lost multiple marriages and careers, and they were in bad physical health. They were in a very dark place in their lives, and they knew something better had to come from it. From that, I believe they were powerfully inspired, and they created a wonderful program. And it really creates a great outline for understanding how to intervene on this disease. Additionally, there are AA programs all over the world. There are an endless number of them. In any community, you have a variety of choices. The whole program itself is so powerful. The principles of it, but also the fact that you have a place to go and meet with other people who have different levels of recovery. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this program for anybody who's really serious about getting sober from their alcohol. It's a very tough thing to just do on your own. It's a very tough thing to do even with a psychologist or a counselor. That program provides a structure and a community that makes you successful. I cannot be more emphatic than that. It is just an incredibly important thing to do. Are there other programs that are good? Yeah, but they don't have multiple meeting places in every city. Okay, so you got to kind of say it's a good program and it's phenomenally available. And so every one of these people I talked about that is now in a very successful recovery, they are very involved in AA, and they found a really secure home there. So I really want to implore you, if this is a problem for you, investigate that program. You may go to one place where you don't like the folks there. Fine, there are other programs. Go and find a place you feel like you fit, find a sponsor, and use that program. Also, highly recommend using a very knowledgeable and skilled counselor or psychologist to help you with this as well. Not every counselor or psychologist understands this disease, so make sure you get somebody who's really good at this. Okay? Now, to kind of look at how this works, I'm going to just follow the famous, everybody's heard of it, the AA 12 steps. Really brilliant stuff, really good outline. It's good stuff to understand. And so as I read these, we're going to be putting them up on the screen as well, and you can come back and look at it some more, like I said, as well as going below to the description box and subscribing to the 2 books we have listed there as well, 2 ebooks that you can get immediately. The first one says, the first step is, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. Okay? So there's multiple parts of this. The first one says, we admitted we were powerless. We admitted we were powerless means 2 things. It means, 1, I can't use it without it using me. Okay? If I have, there's no such thing as, the expression is, 1 is too much and 100 is never enough. It's the idea that basically once you get going, it ain't going to stop. Does that mean if I've been absent for a period of time, the first time I have a beer, I'm going to drink 10? No. More likely, unless you are really, really severe in your alcoholism, it will take weeks or months to slowly deteriorate back to where you were before you started. So don't use the fact that I didn't drink the first time as being an indication I don't have the problem anymore. So the first one, like I said, is this issue of I can't use it. Now, that also means things like I don't need to be drinking non-alcohol beer. Okay? That's just that's a really bad idea, is you got all the other cues to it, you're just not getting the buzz. That's going to start triggering things in your subcortical brain that are going to just simply develop the craving more. You're going to want that thing that has the alcohol with it. It also means that I can't use any other euphoria-creating drugs. Okay? Back in the 80s, this got really, really clear when you would have fellows who were professional athletes, and that was when professional athletes really started making big money. Of course, they're making even bigger money now, but they really started making big money. They had a lot of money. And money isn't always a good thing for people. Too much money gets you in a lot of trouble. And so cocaine had become a very popular thing at that point. So we'd have a professional athlete who became a cocaine addict. They went off to treatment. They got clean. They got it. It was explained to them they really can't use other things. But they knew that for years they had drank beer never with a problem. Okay? And so they'll go back out, and they'll slide into drinking the beer. What happens is that just, again, taps the part of the brain that's programmed for the addiction. They get a craving going. It's going to lead them back to what they did. So powerless means you cannot use the substance at all, and you cannot put yourself in a situation that's similar to it. It also means that if I'm an alcoholic, I don't go and hang out at bars with my friends and just not drink, because that's not going to happen. So that's big one. 1, you don't use it, you don't put yourself in a using situation. The second part of the powerless concept makes this point that says, I can't by pure power of will stop doing this. Okay? I can't just say, I'm just going to do it, I'm just going to do it, I'm just going to do it. My buddy did it for years, so it's impressive that he did, but he never actually resolved the problem. Okay? So it can't just be, I'm not going to do this. It has to be that as a part of this, I delve in and I really begin to dissect and treat and resolve the addiction as it exists within myself and all the aspects of self that drive me towards that addiction. If I'm doing that, that's what's called I'm being in recovery. The fact that I'm not drinking doesn't mean I'm in recovery. The fact that I'm not drinking doesn't mean I'm sober. Sober is reserved for meaning that I'm working on my problems, really resolving the addiction at its roots. So really keep that in mind. When you're talking to an alcoholic, you want credibility, you talk about the difference between being what they call dry and being sober. Dry means I am not using my substance, but all the same kind of personality traits and so on exist in me, and so I'm basically an unhappy person without chemicals. Instead, what we want is we want to be able to really be sober, which means I am working on becoming a more and more satisfied, comfortable, and successful person without chemicals in my life. That's sober. That's in recovery. So there's two parts of what powerless means. Okay, the next one is our lives have become unmanageable. What does that mean? It means this. It means I'm screwing things up. It means because of this addiction, I'm not in control of my life. I'm damaging all different aspects of my life. Okay? What we said earlier is that people have this first step. What we're getting into is that thing that everybody's heard the term that AA made so famous called denial. Now, they didn't create that term. Actually, Sigmund Freud created the term. Yes, he didn't create it because denial has been around forever, but denial as a psychological term was really first coined by Sigmund Freud. And what it means is there is information here that I'm uncomfortable with. I don't want to believe that's so I will tell myself it's simply not so. Okay? And that's very much present in all addictions. So denial is going to play into both am I powerless as well as damage done. I can always minimize or distort those things and believe somehow it's not true. The sad reality is it's this thing that AA made very well-known concept of hitting bottom. Okay? And this, in truth, applies to almost any kind of human change and growth, believe me, but it really applies to addictions. Basically, a person has to experience severe enough loss or threat of loss or suffering to be able to really wake up and give the kind of energy they need to creating change and growth. Okay? If you don't do that, then you're not going to have the wherewithal to stick with this. And so nobody comes in and says, you know, I've been thinking about it. I think that this is just a bad habit. It's probably not good for me. I need to stop this. That doesn't happen. You know, it always means something painful. And so what we hope for is that somebody will have something painful enough early enough to get them to do this. The worst thing that can happen is a slow, insidious deterioration where there's never a dramatic loss. It's dramatic loss that gets people to hit that bottom. So keep that in mind. Know that's how it works. You can know that somebody you love is alcoholic or drug addicted. You can explain to them in the most articulate words why that is. But it's not until they are, you know, going to jail for a DUI and they've puked all over their pants so they don't actually have any pants on anymore and they're humiliated in the jail cell. That moment in time, there's bottom. That's when they get it. They aren't going to get bottom by imagining it. Sadly, they get it by getting it. That gets into another issue we talked about in another presentation about the whole idea about being an enabler. Enablers are people who try to make things work better for the practicing addict, which sadly creates the fact that they never have adequate consequences to get better. So that's our first step. It's a really, really big one. It's the most significant piece of this whole process, so it's why I spend so much time on it. You really need to get those principles. Okay? The next step we get to is came to believe a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. There has always been a lot of tension and debate around the concepts of spirituality. It's because everybody gets very intense and defensive about their position, and whether they believe there is no such thing as a divine source at all, or whether they believe that theirs is the only version. That's why AA was very careful in how they talk about this. You hear how they say, a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. That is as generic a term as they can make. So in truth, for some people who go into the AA program, their power in themselves is the program itself. That's what they see as being their spiritual source. And AA is okay with that. It's just that you need to understand that there's principles that work beyond you. The way I would see this one is, and I'm not selling you my version of spirituality, but I'm sending you a general idea of spirituality, which is that life has purpose. Life is about growth and evolution through adversity. There are forces at work in our lives that we don't see, forces that are trying to push us in the right direction if we pay attention to them. And that's what I think is a really useful way to see spirituality. And so I'm saying, okay, I'm going to plug in, I'm going to start paying attention. I'm just going to start paying attention. When people say things like, the Lord works in mysterious ways, you know what? If you pay attention, a lot of times it's not that mysterious. You know, you just have to pay attention. But we don't want to. We want to kind of have things our way. So it's just saying, one way or another, to believe that something greater than just my own will make me better. The next one says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Okay, and like I said, that could be the group. And it doesn't mean I give up control, okay? It means that I believe that there's some other force that can guide me in this. There's something else that will provide something to me, okay? The key is, whatever you believe, you need to really get that clear in your head. It needs to be a good foundation for you. So that's our number 3. Number 4 is, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. What that means is this. It means multiple things. It means, one, really looking at my whole character development, who I am, how I behave, particularly looking for those aspects of who I am that don't serve me well, and also looking at how have my problems with myself, as well as my problems with my addictive practice, damaged myself and others in the world. Okay? This program is a very strong personal responsibility orientation to it, which is one of the things that makes it so powerful. The way I say it is that the 12 steps are a way of trading in, guilt, shame, and resentment for personal responsibility and relief. And that's what this gives you. And so it's saying, I got to step up fully and recognize the damage I've done, because when I do that, one, I can make peace and do the best I can. We're going to talk about how that's done. But also, I'm making changes in myself. Okay, this is a real cornerstone of that program. One of the things to make sure I kind of comment on this is that we're doing these steps, one, with the help of a sponsor. The sponsor is somebody who has quality time in the program. They're really got quality recovery going, and they're guiding you through it. Often this is done also with your therapist. Okay? And so when I'm working with somebody, I'm always making sure they have a good quality sponsor, and we're kind of double teaming that person in the work. And I'm taking that a little bit deeper psychological approach, but we're both supporting the same process. Let's see. And so the next step is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Okay? And that other human being is generally your sponsor. Sometimes it's me as well. Okay? But what that means is once you've said this stuff out loud, you've made it real. Okay? When it's just in your head or on a piece of paper, it isn't real. When you say it to somebody, it becomes more real. I have to face it more. And also there's the beginning of relief. When I share it with people, I talk about my concerns about it, there's automatically some sense of relief of the burden of these things. The next thing we go to is we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. You hear that phrase, defects of character. That is a really antiquated term. Remember, this program was created in the 1930s. They talked differently than we do now. They thought differently. That's like 80 years ago. That's a really long time ago. And so when they say defects of character, what we would say nowadays as a psychologist, I would say personality disorder issues. That's really what we mean when we say personality disorder. It means that I have an aspect of my personality which is designed to keep me safe and make things work, but in fact it does me a disservice. And so they call it defects of character or character defects. And it's important that one identifies what those patterns are, because it has everything to do with how I process the world and how I respond to the world. Okay? And so one of them can be one which a defect of character would be suspiciousness, hypersensitivity, feelings of superiority or inferiority. It's that way I process reality that affects me adversely and then affects my relationship with the world adversely. And there's a need to really get it out there and see it. One of the really interesting things about the whole AA program that I think is really brilliant is it is on one hand a program which is unconditionally accepting, and on the other hand holds you to a very high standard of personal responsibility. That's a tough one to do, but that's really what this is all about. So on one hand, it's about standing responsible, but it's also about accepting you as you are. But you get that stuff in front of you, and then that's what you're working on. You keep that in front of you. You know that those are the things which perpetuate your addiction and do damage in your life, and that you have to work on those really the rest of your life to continue to get them more and more under control so that you can be a happier, more functional human being and not use chemicals. The next one we say is humbly ask Him to remove all our shortcomings. These steps like this have to do with the idea that the reality of us human beings is when somebody comes in for psychotherapy, there's one of two things that have driven them in the door. Either the world is treating me badly, or I feel bad, or some combination of both. People do not come into therapy because, you know what, I have a really screwy way of looking at the world that makes me feel bad. That's not what we think. We think when we look at the world and respond to it, we are seeing truth. We are reasonable, rational people, and we see truth. Or that we believe that what we're doing is functional and adaptive. So your thoughts and your behaviors are things you tend to be attached to. Okay? You just don't like bad emotions or when the world treats you badly. So that's one of the shifts that has to take place, is to realize that I feel bad and the world treats me badly because I'm thinking in a weird way that doesn't serve me very well, and I'm behaving in ways that don't serve me very well. And that's a tough connection to make. And so when they say, really made a decision, let it go, really, 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 I want you to help me let this go, it's because we're attached to how we are. Okay? People who are compulsive don't see themselves as compulsive, they see themselves as responsible and tidy. Okay? People who are lazy don't see themselves as lazy, they see themselves as laid back and easygoing. Okay? People who are irresponsible don't see themselves as irresponsible, they see themselves as being a free spirit. Okay? We do that with whatever our traits are. Oh, I'm not hypersensitive, I'm just sensitive. I'm attuned to what's going on around me in the world. Okay? I'm not rude, I'm forthright, I just speak my mind. So that's what we do with all these things. That's probably the real core of the struggle with human change. That's why we have several steps just about this, is we are attached to the way we see the world and how we respond to the world. We just don't like how we feel or how the world treats us for that. And so that's the real key of not only the AA program, but of any kind of human, psychological, spiritual change, is that issue. because we have a program that we're attached to. We think it's us and we think it's right. Next one we go is made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. The idea behind this one is what it sounds like. It is making peace in the world. It is standing responsible for my behavior and doing the best I can with it, okay? That's a tough one. That's a real tough one, because the rest of the world's not in recovery, okay? And so they may not always want to hear what you have to say, and they may not respond to it in the way you wish they would. But it's still about you. All you can do is your part. You do the very best you can with that. Again, it cleans the slate. It lets you have a new start on life. It feels like I've done the very best I can with my past. I can move into the future. Let's see. And then the next one is made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Doesn't say if it injured me, okay? Because I got to accept the responsibility for what I did. So the thing is, I'm going to make amends, but in fact doing that is going to do harm to other people. That's just not my place. You know, I can't make that kind of decision. Continue to take a personal inventory. Number 10 is continue to take a personal inventory. When we were wrong, promptly admitted it. That means now I've established a whole style of being that I try to be, every day I try to be more and more attuned to how I am off track, how my style of being doesn't serve me well. Because what happens so often is that the world is a really difficult place. It's full of human beings, and human beings make life hard, okay? And disease and lots of other things too, but people mostly are what make life hard. And so the tendency is to just be frustrated or hurt or disappointed or whatever in the world around me. That doesn't help much. Okay, it has much to do with saying, yes, I'm surrounded by an imperfect world. What is my part of this? Okay, because one, that lets me take responsibility, and two, it makes me more at peace, and three, it makes me more successful. If I can really recognize the things I'm doing to set up problems or to perpetuate them, then I can really make a difference with myself and in the world. The next one is 11, is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Again, recognizing the range of what this means can be everything from very traditional, Southern Baptist to, a New Ager to somebody who is into Zen to somebody who doesn't particularly have a spirituality at all. It's not telling you what to believe. It's really important to get that. It's not telling you what to believe in. It's just saying believe in something. And if what you believe is in the program, good enough. You're doing well with that. But it's that constant working on becoming a better person. One of the things I've talked about before is that we live in an era when in your pocket, in your phone, you can have wonderful apps that help you with your meditation and relaxation. So there's things like Breathe or Headspace or Calm are three of the apps that I'm real familiar with. Great for doing this sort of thing, for prayer and meditation. Use them. They really help you with your peace of mind. And then the last one said, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in our affairs. Okay? And so what it means is that now that I've got it, I'm giving it away. And if I can create that kind of sharing in the world, and this isn't just about AA and recovery, it's about life. It's about being the best person you know how to be. It's about sharing the best gifts you've had. And it's about working on the ways you react to the world, the imperfect world, that doesn't make you part of the problem. Okay? Is this the only thing I could say about recovery from alcoholism? Absolutely not. There's 1,000 other things I could say. But this is a nice package that really talks about this is how it works. Okay? And if you went to an AA program you didn't like, go to another one. Okay? You had a sponsor you didn't like, find another one. This is good stuff. Combine it with the use of a very skilled and knowledgeable addictions treatment counselor, your chances of creating a much happier and more successful life go up dramatically. So again, if you would, you can go to the description box below, and these two of our real-life collections ebooks, the Addictions, Diseases of Isolation, Heal Addictions, Restore Community, and also the Mental Health Issues, Loss of Peace and Joy Within Self. These are nice, short, clear reads. The articles are very short and very useful. They have a lot of applicability to life, so please just go below and do that. I think you'll really enjoy them. They're a good read. And also make sure to like, comment, and subscribe below. Thank you so much. Have a good day.